Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have the privilege of speaking with Adam Bird, a seasoned entrepreneur whose journey is nothing short of inspirational. Adam served just 9 years in the Army, achieving the rank of E5. His military service provided him with invaluable leadership skills, a strong work ethic, shaping the trajectory of his impressive career. Adam is the founder and CEO of Heroes Media Group, LLC, a broadcasting platform dedicated to giving a voice to our community heroes, including military personnel, veterans, first responders, law enforcement, educators, medical professionals, and clergy. His commitment to his community is further reflected in his ventures HMG Beverage and JB Addo or ADDO Clothiers, where he combines entrepreneurial acumen with a passion for giving back. Throughout his career, Adam has faced numerous challenges, from adapting to new technologies to navigating the complexities of transitioning from military to civilian life. Yet he's always maintained his core values of integrity and being a good human, continuously striving to uplift and empower others. Today, Adam will share his journey from military service to entrepreneurship, the founding of Heroes Media Group, and his ongoing mission to support and recognize the heroes in our communities. Join us as we delve into the story of Adam Bird, a true strategic veteran dedicated to making a difference. Let's dive in and warmly welcome Mr. Adam Bird, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran. Adam, it's weird saying my own name a bunch of times. First of all, that's the first that this happened. But man, I'm super grateful. I've been looking forward to this episode for a long time, and I'm glad you're here, brother.
Thank you for the opportunity, man. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, brother. Hopefully I didn't butcher your clothier's name too much.
You said audio. That's JB Audio Clothers. That's one of the companies that I co-own with the gentleman who actually founded it, but we'll get into that later. But yeah,
brother.
Nice work.
Let's dive right in, man, and let's get this show on the road. Let's talk about where you grew up and kind of what inspired you to join the Army.
So I was born, and I say I'm born and raised in Wisconsin. So I'm a true cheesehead through and through. Packer fan. I know that's going to probably just dropped a bunch of listeners because I said that, but it's true. The land of beer and cheese. That's where I grew up. When I was 15, my parents moved to Tucson, Arizona. So I actually graduated high school in Arizona. And then that kind of started the transition into joining the military. I joined the National Guard. And it was kind of, my parents said, "Hey, you need to go get a job." Okay. And this guy that I was playing pickup basketball with twice a week was a recruiter. And he's like, "Hey," and I was like, "Hey man, what's with this Army stuff?" I was like, "I really don't want to do it full time right now. I just kind of want to do is there something I can do on the weekends?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I did. I joined the National Guard. It was, I swore in. It was a Friday the 13th in February, Friday the 13th. Yeah.
That's great.
Should have been a red flag. So that kind of started off and I joined really because I ran out of money for school. I had like a one year scholarship. I wasn't good at school at all. And so I joined the National Guard, and then I never really used my benefits. I kind of dug what we did. I became a truck driver. I was like, what's the quickest thing can kind of get through.
So you were an 88 Mike.
I was an 88 Mike. I didn't like
Okay.
walking. I didn't like walking anywhere. I was just like, well, I'm going to be smart about this, right? So get to point A to point B, I'll drive. So that's what I did, and that started that whole process.
So you were playing pickup basketball with the recruiter. So I'm guessing you never actually entertained any other branches. It was just like kind of part time. I could do this. He sold you.
Yeah, I had started with like, honestly, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, you got to be, my thought process was like, I either want to be a SEAL because they do cool stuff, or I wanted to work on like an aircraft carrier. But then I was like, I get seasick. So that doesn't like, why would I do that? Like, I'd like land. Like, I want my feet to be on land. So, Army was the thing. I had an uncle that graduated from West Point, grandfather that was in Korea, both Army. So it just kind of made sense. So I that's the path I chose.
Perfect, man. And you chose the right branch, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, with almost 50 of these episodes recorded, I think you're one of the Army is not leading the way in entrepreneurs coming on this show right now. It's definitely the Navy seems to be like the most prominent so far, followed by Marines of all people, and then the Air Force, and I think the Army's bringing up the rear.
Ain't that something?
Isn't that crazy?
Marine Corps, Jesus.
The Cran Eaters, yeah. But let's talk about some of the key lessons you learned during your time in the Guard, and how have those influenced what you do today, without going into kind of all the details of what you actually do today.
So when I got into the Guard, it was the weekend warrior thing, is what they like to call it, right? And I did that for the first few years, and then I actually got an opportunity to work for the Air Guard and Army Guard at the time had a joint counter drug task force, and I got to work on that for a year. And each year your orders would renew, so you're hoping that you keep a job your following year. I did that for like 4 years, and that was great. It kind of taught me a lot about leadership and working with others. And then eventually I went to Army Instructor Training School. That was a very big turning point for me, because I had a first sergeant that was very supportive, believed in me, and I had to teach a class. You had a 60-minute class that you had to teach, and he was standing in the back, and you can't say or ah more than 5 times in 60 minutes. My first time going through, I lasted about 3 minutes, and then after that, it was just like he kind of sat me down, gave me some pointers. And that's when I kind of realized that like somebody kind of believes in me, and I'm learning something here. So it was one of those things where I just took that and tried to implement that in my daily life outside of the military.
Hell yeah, brother. You mentioned a 2003 deployment as a significant moment from your career. So was that deployment on the drug task force, or did you do that at the beginning of the war there for the invasion? What did that look like for you, and how did that shape you?
Well, it's funny you asked that. So I was on a task force at the time, but that was actually for the initial push. And I left 10 days after my son was born. So I'm a new father, and my son's 10 days old, and I get shipped off overseas to go play in the sandbox. It was tough, because when you're in the Guard, a lot of the times what happens, for those that don't know, you go to like a MOB station. So for us, we were in Arizona, so our MOB station was Fort Bliss, Texas, down in El Paso, and we were there for a couple weeks. And I got a Red Cross letter to go home. My son was having some difficulties, and he turned out to be fine. But it was like that starts kind of, you're not really sure what to think. You're a new dad. You're freaking out. I take care of that. I get a 72-hour pass. I come back 2 days later. We're off on a plane. We go to Iraq. I come home 8 months later, and it was, the experience over there was cool. We had like 20 of us that were in a group that got attached to fifth group. So we kind of spent most of our time with training the new freedom fighters, the militia or what have you, kind of going around, got to do some cool things and see some neat stuff. And I grew up going to church, so that's obviously a very biblical area over there, and got to see some things that you only read about in the Bible. And then came home and it was like, okay, now you have to go back and be a parent and do all this other stuff. And that part was a little difficult because your mind is still over doing other stuff.
Yeah, man. Particularly, so I joined in 2003. I got to the third AD 2 weeks a month. I can't really remember. It wasn't long after they had come home from the invasion. So that's really the last time our Army, Marines, whatever, saw kind of the conventional warfare where you're just rolling through a country, leaving just a trail of death in your wake, right? Everything from, Kuwait to the Karbala Gap, getting through the Karbala Gap, and then on to the airport, just literally the desert with bodies. And so, I don't have that experience. I have 4 other very unique experiences, with 3 to Iraq and 1 to Afghanistan, but I didn't get to go on the invasion. And so, when I got to my first unit, I actually ended up as an infantry guy being attached to the support platoon, basically to be security for all the truck drivers, the 88 mics. And I heard all the stories from all those guys, during the invasion. So it doesn't surprise me that you struggled to come home and try to make sense of everything that you had saw, particularly being with fifth group, because I can only imagine the kind of things that you guys were getting into over there.
Yeah. I mean, it was, without going into a whole lot of detail with it, from what I remember, it wasn't, people say it was a job, you know what I mean? Like I was fortunate, like, I'll say this, I never had to pull the trigger on it. There was a couple of times we came close, but we never did. And I mean, it was kind of, our mindset was like, we have like 100 and 120 freedom fighters with us. Like, this is their war. Let them fight it. We're there to support, help, and kind of move them around. We had the old Deuce and Ass, the old 5 tons that we were basically pushing them on and driving them. We're like a glorified chaperone, really. So that part of it was it was different. I mean, I was 24, 25, at the time, and you're full of piss and vinegar, and you're just like, yeah, I'm invisible. And then you get home and you're like, you got to pay bills. You got to, take care of a kid. Now you have, to show up for work and do all this other stuff. It's like, you don't have somebody necessarily telling you what to do. Or it was like life was, you had the mindset of like, life was a little bit easier when I was getting shot at, not having to deal with like day-to-day stuff back here. If that makes sense.
It makes total sense. We've actually said that and had this conversation on this show before, where being deployed, particularly for me, because I did 4 of them, you start to crave that life, the simplicity of that life, because it's really comes down to one thing. You either kill or you're going to be killed, right? Like that's really all there is to being over there.
Yeah, it's an adrenaline rush, because when you're getting shot at, you're like, oh, it's like, yeah, here we go, and then it's like, then it calms down and you're like, man, I'm bored as shit. I ain't got to do it, but at the same time, you don't have anything to worry about either. It's like, you got food, you got, a cot sometimes, or where you're sleeping, either in the dirt or on a cot or on for us in the truck. It just seemed like life was more simple, but at the same time, you realize, I think one of the things that I'll never forget, this was like how we take things for granted here in the West. Like, toilet paper over there was like currency,
gold. Yeah.
And it sounds like, what are you talking about toilet paper for? Like, listen, when you're out of it, you're wishing you're ripping up your t-shirts and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, hey, like, and when you found toilet paper, you got as much as you possibly could. And it's little stuff like that. Cold porcelain, guys, I know what I'm talking about when I say that. You know what I mean? It's running water, hot water. I didn't shower for several weeks the first time, once we got over there. It was, I remember the first like baby wipe shower that we took that had like running water was in Baghdad, and we had it was a pipe that was coming out of a hospital, and the water was freezing. That I just remember, I was like, oh my god, but it's water.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
like a sanitizer or baby wipe. So yeah,
No, for sure.
you
The
realize how
things,
you take things for granted.
yeah, things like access to water, just in general. I mean, for a period of time on my first deployment, we were limited to 2 1-liter bottles of water a day.
Oh wow.
That didn't last a whole lot long, but also like when you have this kind of rule put on you that you can only have so much water, it's like shit, like this fucking real. This isn't cool. And then that progresses into leaving your water bottle pallets on a roof of some dilapidated palace that you call home, and stabbing it so you could take warm showers in the evening, which is really not a shower because you're not getting much out of the water bottle. But you're absolutely right. Like life, it's simple, but it's not simple. You definitely become aware of all of the things that you take for granted, but also like, I don't know, for me, I always craved that life because I didn't have to be a real adult. I didn't have to pay bills. I didn't have to decide what was for dinner. I didn't have to grocery shop.
Yeah, it just seemed easier for a lot of people, and it's like, I now, is that to say would I prefer that life than the one I have now? No, no, no. I mean, it was, I enjoyed being I love being a parent. I think being a father is the greatest thing that one could be, next to being in serving a country and being in the military.
For sure, brother. So you do that deployment, you come home, you were dealing with all of that stuff. When did the decision to get out of the guard? When did that happen for you?
I think it was like late 2016, 2006, 2007 timeframe. It was I was a single parent, so I came back from Iraq, did the divorce thing, got custody of my son. So I was a single parent, had sole custody of him. He lived with me, and around it was like Hurricane Katrina, getting ready to gear up for Afghanistan. They're like, hey, you need. And at the time, I wasn't in the. I was on the books for a transportation company, but I was training down in Phoenix as an instructor for the military school down there. And it was kind of like, getting new recruits, getting them ready to go off to basic training and kind of giving them a taste of what it would be like, and just, teaching them stuff. And I love doing that. I love being behind the podium. I love teaching. I thought it was great. But then they were calling me back, and I was like, I'm not doing that again. And they were just like, well, one, you have to, and two, you need a family care plan. So I called my parents, and I was just like, hey, I'm, getting ready to mob up again. I'm gonna need you to, watch Junior while I'm gone. And they're like, yeah, that doesn't work for us. And I was like, you got to be shitting me. Like, if you don't watch him, and he's gonna end up at the court's gonna let him go to his mother's, and we can't have that. And it was at that point, and it was kind of like near the end where it was kind of like I had went to PLDC, tore all the ligaments in my ankle. That was the second time. First time I went, I tore the other ankle. So I was kind of like, this is God's way of saying this is not what He has planned for me. So I remember telling the captain at the time that, well, I'm not doing that. If you don't like it, then I'll just call the IG's office. I was I had a bit of a mouth on me. And so I called the IG's office, and I was just like, hey, they want me to do this. I don't have a family care plan. So I have like 6 months left before I reenlist. Why don't you just take the second half of my reenlistment bonus? Because I had already reenlisted once before. I was like, take the second half of that reenlistment bonus and then shove it and then get me out. The next day, it was just like, done. And I was like, man, if it was that fast, like, I didn't mean shit to them, excuse my language, but it's just, that's what it was like, you know what I mean? And I was very, very bitter for years about that. Fortunately, I still, even to this day, 20 years later and stuff, I still stay in touch with a lot of people, that I served with, both on the task force and in units that I was a part of and stuff. So it is, but I honestly, that was like the kind of an eye-opening experience where it was like, I was bitter, but at the same time, it was the right thing to do because I liked being a dad more than I liked anything else.
For sure. And we're getting to the part. So obviously we're moving into the transition and how difficult that be. And my transition was awful. I felt the same way. So you can speak freely here. You don't have to watch your language. In fact, I would prefer that you speak how you speak, because
round one.
yeah. Well, honestly, because I think that's the only way to truly, as military veterans that we are, to articulate how we actually feel about the way we're treated when we get out. And you're absolutely right. I was med boarded at almost 13 years. I just round up because it was over 12 and a half. But at 13 years, and the Army didn't want fuck all to do with me. They just don't care.
You're a number. You're expendable, which we knew when we signed up. We knew we were expendable when we signed up. But like when you invest so much time in it, and then you got deployments behind your back, and you're just kind of like, you believe that they're going to help you and take care of you, and then you transition out, and it's just like
the exact opposite. They don't give a fuck. Yeah, no, for sure. So let's talk about your transition. And I always try to paint this picture, because I do believe the transition from the Guard back to civilian life is kind of different than the one from active duty, but most of the Guard guys, luckily they were blessed. They didn't have too difficult of transitions because they had excellent careers that they were in, while they were in the Guard or whatever. But I know you and I, just based on what you filled out to come on the show, we had a transition that was very similar. And I'd like you to speak to, the challenges you faced and what your transition was like. Did you fall down that transition hole pretty far? Did you have the substance abuse problems? Did you have the suicidal ideations? Like, what did that look like for you?
So, like you said, the Guard is a little bit different because at the time I was working for a Fortune 500 company, and I was very successful, and I was in an upper, middle management with that company at the time. But when I got out, it was like, some people were like, "Dude, you're angry, you're this, you're that," and I was frustrated with how I went out. And I guess you could say I went out on my own terms, but it wasn't like I had planned on retiring at that point, and it didn't happen. So I was angry. I was angry at God. I was angry at my life. I was angry at myself, my parents. Like anything I could get mad at, I would just get mad at. The only thing that kept me kind of grounded was my son. And, eventually, I haven't really shared this story very often, but I'll share it here. There was a night where I'm not a big drinker. Those that know me well, I'm allergic to alcohol, so it doesn't do well with me.
It doesn't behoove you to drink it then.
It's like I'm a big guy, and it's still. But I remember I was depressed. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I felt like something was wrong with me, and I was going from kind of one bad relationship to the next. So I was pissed off about this military stuff because friends were getting deployed again and I couldn't go. And so I crawled into a bottle. And I remember one night, I want to say my son was like 4, maybe 5. And I guess I had passed out on the living room floor, and the bottle was empty next to me. And he woke up in the middle of the night, and he's like tapping me on the head, like, "Hey, Dad, you all right? Daddy, you okay?" Dad kind of. And I woke up, and the first thing I saw, it's like I saw him, and then I looked over and I saw the bottle, and I was like, "What an asshole! Like, why? Like, I'm better than this. I need to. This can't happen. I can't do this again. This is not how I want him to. Well, I don't want him to see me like this. I don't want him. I certainly don't want him to think that this is okay either." And from that point on, it was even to this date. I mean, he's 21 now. Very rare do I drink in front of him, and if I do, it might just be one drink, and I'd never finish it.
Man, that story is a lot more common, I think, than people realize. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us, because you spoke to something that I dealt with, anger, rage, for no reason, and not really understanding where it comes from or why. And it took a lot of work for me to understand that. And so I'm curious, what was it that would set you off? Were you just angry to be angry? Do you even know?
It was anything. And here's the thing: as I'm getting more seasoned in life, I'm realizing too that, some of it you get triggered from your time in service, sure, but there's more to it than just that. I mean, it goes back to like your childhood. And
Bingo.
and here's the thing that absolutely blows my mind. And I literally just had this conversation with a lady down in Florida last week, and she's like, "Yeah, it really stems from your childhood." And I'm hearing more and more about veterans with combat experience or that have deployed, or just people in general when they suffer from, I don't want to say suffer, but for lack of a better word, that have PTSD or that they've gone through some type of traumatic experience. They immediately think, well, what's the most recent thing I've gone through? That's what's causing the problem. It's not. You have to dive so much deeper. There's so many layers into it. And I think back, and it happens with your childhood. It goes all the way back to childhood, and a lot of people, at least ones that I'm coming across lately, don't want to, like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, why would that bother me? Because that's the foundation that's the foundation, and then everything else is stacked up on that.
Oh, brother, I'm so glad that you're talking about this right now, because this is the message I've been trying to get through to veterans through every episode that I do. And to hear someone put their finger on it, just like I put my finger on it, a little bit backstory for me, because we just met, but a year ago yesterday, I've completed my ayahuasca, retreat with Heroic Hearts Project, which absolutely changed my life. But that's really what it showed me. It showed me how to deal with the unresolved traumas from my childhood, growing up in a broken home with a mother and a father who were constantly fighting at each other's throat, a mother trying to keep us from our father and whatnot, and how all of that shaped me, developed in my personality as I was growing up, because I was pretty young when that happened. Then I had to work through all the issues with the bullying when I was growing up. I was a 4 eyes and I had an eye patch at one point. And I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. So you can imagine how life was like for somebody wearing glasses, unlike today where everybody thinks glasses are a fucking accessory and they match your outfit. And it's like, fuck all of you, because you guys were the ones making my life a living hell when I was growing up, but you're right. It's so much more than just what is some recent trauma that I've had. And one of the tricks that I often give veterans who are transitioning to help them understand this is like, okay, so you sit with yourself and you understand that you're angry. You acknowledge the feeling, right? When have I been angry before? And then you just walk it backwards all the way to the beginning. And what you discover is so powerful and life-changing. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, one, recognizing it, right? Recognizing when you're having, like, some people call it an episode, or your feelings or you just start heating up. Like me, it's like I start taking some deep breaths, or I'm an outdoor guy. So I'll go for a walk. I'll go walk in the woods. I'll take my dogs out, whatever. And that kind of calms me down. And like my wife has called me out on it a couple of times. She's like, "Hey," she's like, you good?" And like, I'm not thinking anything. Like maybe I'm acting a certain way or whatnot. And it's completely just out of my. She said, "Why don't you go for a walk for a little bit?" And like she says it in such, like, God bless, I got lucky, but she says it in such a loving way. She's, instead of just calling me out and just like, "Hey, asshole, go go do that. You're being a dick." She's just like, "Hey, mate." She's like, "Why don't you go for a walk for a little bit? It's nice out." And I'm just like, "Okay, I'm acting a certain way. I'll go. I'm gonna come back." And she'd be like, "You good?" And I was like, "Yeah, thanks for." She's like, "You want to talk about it?" I was like, "I don't know what to say." And there are a lot of the times now where I was just like, "I appreciate you calling me out on it. I have no idea. I'm frustrated about something, but I don't know what it is. There's something poking at me, but I can't put my finger on it." Do
Oh,
you know?
dude, and that's so good, man, because oftentimes we really can't. I am the same way. Anger was my big thing. I'd be angry at anything and everything for no apparent reason. And when asked why, I was never able to articulate what had made me angry or why I was angry. And so I'm so glad that you're talking about this, because you mentioned two things that I use. Everybody who's listening to this, should already know that I do morning walks, 4 miles as soon as I get out of the bed every morning. And that's the time that I use to be mindful of everything that I have to deal with, whatever is going on in here. I use that time, and then I usually do like a little morning walk video on LinkedIn based on my thoughts, because it's real, it's vulnerable, and it's actionable for anybody in the audience. And then breath work. You said you take some deep breaths, and I'm a big proponent. I love breath work, but I don't take it to the extreme. I just literally 4 count in, 4 count out kind of thing. And another thing I use is grounding, walking barefoot in my grass, just go walk laps a couple of times a day. And so you sharing that with us and then saying, I don't know what to say, and being that example for others who may be going through it, because it's very true. Like, we oftentimes don't know, and that is okay as long as you're aware of it, you catch it, and do something to de-escalate it.
Yeah, don't listen. We're human. We're walking emotions, right? Shit's gonna happen. You're gonna get mad eventually, and that's okay. Recognize it's okay to get mad, but don't take it out on somebody that doesn't deserve it either. You know what I mean? It's okay to be sad. Talk about it. It's okay to talk about it. Sometimes I think, and this is the one thing that I've noticed over the years, is we have been trained to take it all in. All right, we're men. We're supposed to take it in. We're the strong ones, and this and that. But who's to say that we can't break down and open up either? That doesn't make you weak. You got that. That's pride. Put your pride aside and talk about it, because the shit's not going to get fixed unless you talk about it. Let's be real. Nothing's going to get fixed unless you open up and talk about it. And if you say, "No, I'm good. I ain't got to worry. No, I'm good."
Well, and largely because that's what we're taught, right? From day one, we're taught in the Army that.
But now you have to, when you're transitioning out. Well, you've been trained one thing, so now you don't have any training going into it. You're coming out of a uniform and literally going into a different uniform, right? So what type of training are you getting when you're coming out? Now, granted, over the years, now mind you, I've been out for quite a while. I've seen the military. They've gotten better since my day, but it's not. It's
no,
gotten better. Very little, but it's there's still a lot that can be done. But here's the one thing that I love about our community is that there are so many organizations, and there's so many just individual people out there that are willing to help. They want to help. And this is one thing I noticed. This was an old Vietnam vet told me this. When I was going through my stuff, he's like, you should let people help you. And I was like, fuck it, I don't want people's help. I don't need people to help me. I got it. And the first thing he says, like, name me somebody that's been successful that got there without any help. And I was like, okay, yeah, I don't have anybody. That's okay. Point taken. One for you. Got it. And then years later, somebody else said, is like, if you are empty, you want to help people, right? Like I told you before, like I feel like my purpose in life is to help as many people as I can. But if my cup isn't full, how can I help other people? Right? So that means I have to step back and I have to fill my cup too, to ensure that I can fill others. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, brother. Yes, I know exactly what you're saying.
And so the other part of that is maybe there's somebody out there, Adam, that wants to help you. And let's say, Adam, that you don't know, I don't want them to help me. I got this. Well, what if their purpose in life is to help other people, and you're blocking them from fulfilling their purpose? What does that make you then?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, this is powerful stuff, dude. Like, cause it's true. If you had a Vietnam veteran tell you, you need to talk about this. You should get some help. For me, those guys, there was nobody here to help them when they came home because they were getting spit on as they came home, right? Like society, America in the 70s after Vietnam was not a great place to be a veteran, right? There were no resources. They didn't have help. And you've got this man who, by and large sounds like he figured some shit out, telling you should get some help. And here we are, our egos getting in the way, right? I don't want your help.
Yeah, and that's, I think you're seeing more and more of it, especially people from like you see some of the special operations community. You see guys out of there. They're now, some of them, to my understanding, are doing like certain training because there's alternative medicines and stuff like that. We've talked a little bit about some alternative stuff as opposed when you're transitioning out. It's the VA's got a bad rap, and in my opinion, rightfully so, because of the BS that they make you go through to try to get help. Now that has gotten better, in my opinion, because I've seen it from several different VAs. I was down, in Phoenix, and I was at the Phoenix VA when that all that stuff got tied in with all those deaths and stuff like that. Out here where I live now, they roll out the red carpet for the veterans that come in. I mean, they have, the last time I went to an appointment, they had 2 people escorting me up to there, and it wasn't because I was doing anything wrong. They were literally talking about asking me how my week's going and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, this is, they legitimately care. So and that's kind of the other thing that blows my mind. I'll get off that soapbox with the VA. But it's like, how do they not communicate?
Right. Well, and I've got the same experience with VAs. I've messed with the VA in Washington where I got out. It was awful. The American Lake VA sucks really bad. And I hope you're listening to this so you fix your shit. Then I was Columbia, South Carolina, which is maybe far and away one of the worst because there's only one VA hospital to service the whole entire state.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really bad. Yeah, it's really bad. Well, South Carolina is a really poor state. The only money in South Carolina is out in Charleston. Yeah, and it's old money too, right? So, and then the VA is actually in Columbia, and I mean, it was taking 8 to 12 months to get an appointment to do anything there. And now I'm here in Florida, and the Orlando VA, they built an entire city around that hospital, and it's amazing. It's such a good VA. There's still a little bit of time delays in certain things, but for the most part, it's a great VA healthcare system, and I don't have any complaints about it. But you're right. The VA is lacking. It could be a lot better, and that kind of leads us into what you had said. You didn't get much help initially with your transition. Back when you got out, it was probably ACAP, right?
Yeah, it was, and I don't even think I got that, quite honestly.
Yeah, and I got out in 2015. It was still ACAP. I know since I've gotten out, it's changed to like SFL TAPS, but I talk to a large number of transitioning veterans on a daily basis, and they all say that it's not getting any better. There have been a couple of programs introduced like SkillBridge, which I think is a giant step forward, but they're not offered. I just read an article that someone on LinkedIn posted last week that said, Command is stopping senior NCOs, the ones who need it the most, from doing SkillBridge programs. E8s, E78s, and E9s are not allowed to do these SkillBridge programs. And I'm thinking, we're shafting the guys who need this the most institutionalized guys.
Yeah. My thought process, my initial reaction to that is because they're probably the ones that already have 6-figure contracts signed up with like Raytheon or GM or what have you. And I'm saying that very loosely because I know there's going to be somebody out there like, screw you, Adam, blah, blah, blah. It's not. It's been my experience because I know a lot of the higher ups that a lot of them have done that. But that's not what I'm saying. So don't take what I just said twisted. Everybody should go through some type of program when they get out. The one thing that I've noticed, I've been blessed to work with a lot of different nonprofits all over the country. I've interviewed literally hundreds, and some of the ones that I work with very closely still, that's the type of stuff they do. They want to make sure that they're helping out. One's based out of Texas, where you shoot your azimuth and get you on track to do X, Y, and Z. There's one down there in Tampa, which I'll be down in September with, doing some work with. They I mentioned, you're hanging up one suit or one uniform and putting on another one, and that's through JB Auto Clothiers. They work with Team Atto, which is based out of Tampa. Shout out to you guys down there. But it's find something. I think the biggest thing is when you're getting ready to transition, and the biggest mistake, especially for young troops, is, oh, I'm only doing 4 years, I'm getting out. Great, good on you, best of luck to you. But when you hit like year 3 and you only got 12 months left, you better be filling out applications and you better be looking where you want to end up and all this. And that's the biggest thing. And even people that are getting ready to retire that want to get a job when they retire and transition out of the military, oftentimes they wait too long. They're like, oh, I got 6 months left, now I'll start looking for a job. You're about 18 months behind. Like when you're sitting 24 months and getting ready to get out, like you should start making contact with companies, doing internships and
Networking. Yeah.
Networking ass off. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing.
For sure. You said it took several years for you to find your purpose. You and I share the same purpose. I came to the conclusion that my purpose is to truly help as many veterans improve their situation in life as I can. What that looks like right now is this podcast, the community that launches on August 1st. Coaching, mentoring, just giving everything away that I've learned to all these veterans to try and help them on the right track. So how did you find your purpose in helping people and whatnot?
I was forced. What I mean by that was, I mentioned earlier that I was a single parent. And when my son got to the point where he was starting high school, we had a big decision to make where he got accepted into a private school that was 2 hours away. And it was close to my parents' house. And so we kind of had a family meeting and we were all just kind of like, this is where he's going to go to school because there's just way too many opportunities for him. It's even to date, it's been the hardest decision of my life that I've ever had to make, was letting him move in with my parents so he could have a better life. And now let me be clear, because I know some people, I used to get this all the time from friends, like, oh, I would never let my kid, move in. He was 2 hours away. 1, 2, I was there every weekend. 3, I was the one making the parental decisions. Like, my parents would be like, hey, no, their rules because he's under their roof, but I was the one making all the decisions when it came to him. And at that point, I then realized, oh shit, I got to grow up now. Like everything that has happened to me up until that point of my son's, and I hate to say it like this, but I kind of was like using my son as the excuse not to deal with my own demons and my own problems and figure out what it is that I wanted to do when I grew up. So I was 38 years old and I'm just like, oh shit, I gotta, what do I want to do? And at that point in my life, I had already been a seasoned entrepreneur. I've had several businesses that were successful, a couple that failed at that point. But it wasn't until probably his senior year where I kind of realized, where I was just like, I'm onto something with Heroes Media Group. We're doing great things and I like helping people. And I can't even tell you what sparked it. It was a conversation, but I just know it was a conversation, but I can't tell you with who. And I couldn't even tell you the time of year it was. But I remember thinking, somebody said, hey, I took your advice and I made 6 figures last year. And I was like, what? And it was like, yeah. And I was like, and now I'm doing this, this, and this. And I was like, that made me feel good, knowing that I had something I had said, I had a small piece of that person's life that they thought that made them successful. And that made me feel good. And I wanted to get that feeling again. So then it was just like, okay, how can I help as many people each and every day for the rest of my life, as long as God lets me wake up every morning. And it doesn't have to be financial. It could be just listening to somebody, or making somebody smile, or introducing one person to another, or whatever. And it doesn't sound sexy, but it makes me feel fucking good. And that's what I strive to do every day, is try to help people any way that I can.
Brother, oh man, I'm so pumped right now because it's exactly how I feel about it. Just one DM can just make your whole day, right? Like I took your advice and I feel better, and it's like yes, like that's my purpose, and I achieved that today, right? Like you said, making a connection, making connections in the DMs of LinkedIn is one of my favorite things to do. It's like, somebody sends you a message and they're like, hey, I'm looking to do this, do you think you can help me? Like, no, I can't help you, but let me introduce you to this person. And then they start the conversation and they forget to kick you out of it, and you come back to it because you're getting notifications, and you just see where it goes from there, and you're like, I did that. I helped this person get to where they are right now. Man, it's one of the best feelings in the world. And I have to agree with you 1,000%, because every time it happens, it's like that drug where that high never just really goes away,
Yep. You get all those endorphins going, and you're just like, all right, cool. This is happening. And then next thing you know, you see the person on the news for something good. Let's be clear on that. And that's, you know,
I haven't seen anybody on the news yet, but that's
yeah,
another goal I need to set for
one
myself.
of those things, or you get a news article or in the paper or something like that, and you're just like, dude, yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there.
What about when you help people and then they pass your name along to somebody else to do a feature or a story or some kind of, be featured somewhere? How does that make you feel?
Weird.
It is weird, but it kind of makes me feel good too.
Oh, I feel great, honored, um,
A little undeserving.
a little, oh, very much undeserving. Yeah, I don't, there's times where it's like, yeah, I want those accolades because it's cool. It means that I'm doing the right thing. But at the same time, I don't want those fucking accolades. I just want to be the guy behind in the background that's just kind of doing. I want to be like the silent assassin, if you will. Like you're doing this, this, and this, and you're making everything happen. But at the same time, you're like, nobody can see. Like I tell people, somebody asked, who is that? And I was trying to be funny, but it was like, who is Adam Bird really? I said, I'm the most famous person you've never heard of.
Dude, that's a good one. That's a good one.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of the mindset. It sounds a little arrogant. I'm not sorry for it. I it's one of those things where if I'm helping people and I'm helping other businesses and they're doing well, whatever their definition of success is, they're achieving their definition of success, then I'm the most famous person you've never heard of, and I'm okay with that.
Such an awesome answer, brother. So you said you were forced to figure it out and you had started Heroes Media Group. You said you had basically been a serial entrepreneur, had a couple of other businesses. Where does your entrepreneurial spirit come from, just in general? How did you get into entrepreneurship? For me, like I like to ask this question because I grew up in rural Indiana in the cornfields, southern Indiana, Poseyville, tiny little town. I joined because I wanted out. I wanted to see the world. I knew that there was something more than working on the farms or working in a school, being a teacher, which is what most of the people I graduated with were doing. But entrepreneurship was not something that was ever presented to me, not even in my travels in the Army. I didn't figure that out until I was in college and ran across another one of my Army buddies, one of my best friends to this day. And he was like, dude, we can build something. We don't have to work for somebody forever. We just have to figure it out. And I became obsessed. So I like to ask, like, what sparked it for you? How did you learn about it? And what ultimately led to you taking that first step, starting that first business?
I think it all started like in childhood, quite frankly. My pop, my stepdad, to me, he's pop. He's always been there for me. And growing up, he taught me what hard work was. And we had a fireworks business in the summertime, so it was like, April, May, I'd spend my weekends putting together like little displays and stuff like that. And then on the weekends, we would drive all over Wisconsin and sell these fireworks to like gas stations and stuff like that. And we'd collect baseball cards. That was our thing growing up. I think that's where like the seed was planted, because I saw him doing that, himself. And then fast forward, I was living in Flagstaff, Arizona, and I wanted something part-time. So I started a landscaping company, and I was doing that a couple, just, side jobs like yard work, mowing yards. In the winter times, I'd remove, snow removal. And I did that for a couple of years while I was up there. And then it got to the point where when I cut my teeth in radio, my business partner at the time, we looked at each other like, dude, we could do this online. Nobody's doing it. And we were the first veteran podcast network ever around. And it was a blast. And then we did that for like 3.5 years. We had different visions of what we wanted to do with it. So we parted ways. And the next day I kept doing what, I'm doing here with you is podcasting. That this month, July 2024, we're celebrating our 9th year under Heroes Media Group.
Congratulations, brother.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Was that partner's name Michael Madsen by chance?
It was not, no.
Okay. Do you know him?
I don't recognize the name.
Yeah, he's one of these big radio guys. I don't know anything about radio. I literally talked to another big creator on LinkedIn who told me start a podcast because I'm not the guy that's going to get my message across behind a keyboard. Thanks, Mike Romaine. Shout out to you, dude, because this has been the greatest decision I ever made. But I met him, and he was trying to bring me into the fold of what veteran radio is and like how many people you can reach with it and all of that. And so I was just kind of curious when I talked to another person who's in that market.
As far as we know, like we were, there wasn't, when we started doing it back in 2012, it was, log into Google Hangout to do it live on YouTube. I mean, it was, and there was maybe 4 companies around where you could host your show. Now there's like 15, 20 different places to do it. I mean, the things have changed so much over the last decade, and it's been fun to watch. And it's funny because I was recently at an event in North Carolina, and the majority of the people there had been podcasting for like 3-4 years. And then they turn and look at me and like, how long have you been doing it, Adam? I was like, oh, since 2012. And everybody's like, Jesus, what? Like, oh, yeah, I've been around for a while.
Yeah, man.
But I don't like that type of attention either.
Yeah, you want to be the most famous person everybody's never heard of.
I'm just gonna be back here in the corner, and I'll just keep an eye on everything. Like, you got questions, raise your hand. I'll answer.
So why podcasting, and why Heroes Media Group? I assume it's more than just a podcast, right? It's a media company.
I mean,
so
now it started off as a podcast network where I was just helping people host their shows, and I would mention it, weekly. And we would post about it, but it turned into we're a full-fledged agency now. I mean, we have anything that you can think of that ties in with podcasting, we do. Production, post-production, we write scripts for people. We help people launch their podcast, transcription. We've implemented AI, different AI softwares now. So we do all of that. And then we also, for authors, we have a publication department where we'll take your manuscript and turn it into an audiobook. So we've done I think we've done like 7 or 8 audiobooks in the last 5 years, and we're working on 2 right now. One will launch, I want to say like October, November of this year, and the other one should be predicting sometime around January, February.
That's really cool, man. That's so cool. Any memorable stories or successes that have come from Heroes Media Group that you want to share?
Jesus.
What's your favorite one? What's the first one that comes to mind when I ask that question?
The success of HMG is the people that are involved. There's probably close to 50 shows on the network right now, and we've worked with another 20 or 30 that are no longer with us. And that's just what you would find on the website. It's really about the shows. It was my vision. I'm just a visionary person behind it. It's the shows and the people that are involved that really deserve the accolades of Heroes Media Group, and it's the community in which we support. I started Heroes Media Group. It was Heroes Media Group because I had the veteran. It was just all veterans, right? And I'm always going to do stuff for veterans for obvious reasons. But I wanted to open it up to law enforcement, firefighters, first responders, clergy piece, and educators. I was a high school teacher for 2 years, a substitute teacher for 2 years as well. And I got to see that side of public school, and it did something else, So as far as like the success, now, as far as like feathering the caps and stuff like that, the shows on the network have done tremendous. There was actually one show that I brought over from the old platform is called the Arms Room Show, and they've been with me since day one. They're great friends of mine, and they do fantastic. I've done the Super Bowl. We've gone to NASCAR. We've done NCAA Final Four. We do a lot of different sporting events. Army Navy game. That's kind of my the one that I cover because it's selfish. I just love the history, behind that stuff. So has doing this opened up a lot of doors, and not just for me, but for everybody involved, I think. And after 9 years, we're just getting started.
Yeah, man. No, I absolutely resonate with what you're saying, because since I've started mine, the opportunity that's been put in front of me, it's unbelievable, the opportunities you get just from sitting down and recording conversations with people. It's mind blowing, what you get.
You learn so much from it. I've been fortunate to interview some Hollywood, actors and producers, all the way down to, fellow veterans, to, my neighbor, and everything is you learn something from everything. And you would think, some episodes you think, oh, this is so-and-so, so it's probably got a ton of downloads. And then you get like somebody like your neighbor or something like that, and that like goes through the roof just because of the topic that you're talking about. And that's the cool thing about it, is you can sit down behind the mic, and depending on, once you figure out what type of show you want to do, I do a show, I do a couple of shows, but the one show is called The Decision Hour, and I've had that one since 2015. And that one's more of a, it started off as a business philanthropy type show, and now it's more of, I consider it to be an educational show, because you can learn, like we all make decisions, right, Adam? So name a time, Adam, in your life where your feet are on the line and you have to make that decision. What is it, and what's the atmosphere like? And now everybody's like tuned in and like, okay, well, what's his decision hour?
Dude, so I'm gonna have to listen to that one, because there's a lot of decisions coming down the pipe right now that I have to make, and seriously, and I think you'll relate to this, right? Like, podcasting has brought me so much opportunity that my challenge is not saying yes to opportunity; it's learning to say no to opportunity.
Yeah, that's a good feeling, isn't it?
It's so. I think that it ultimately will be a good feeling, yes. But for me, where I'm at, and very early in this journey, and really just coming to terms with, me as a human, Adam Peters is capable of so much more than I ever gave myself credit for. It's a weird feeling, because the way I grew up, the way I was raised, you don't say no to opportunity, because you never know when another one's coming.
So what you're saying is you're going through a transition right now.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm very aware of it, and I think that's why this is cool, to get to have conversations like this, because I can now have the ability to reach out to the network that I'm building and ask advice of people who may have been there before me, and like, hey, these are the opportunities I've had put in front of me in the last week. Where do you think I should go from here? And I'm so blessed, because I have several mentors that are helping me along, but I just got hooked up with an amazing mentor through the ACP program. I have him for an entire year, and probably longer, because it's a two-way street. He's learning from me, and he tells me about it every time we meet, but also I'm learning so much from him in the entrepreneurship realm. And really, he's my accountability partner for saying no to opportunity, because he's told me to get my head out of my ass a few times just in the short 6 weeks that we've been together, because I don't know how to say no to opportunity. And to me, all these opportunities, it's like, holy shit, like these are awesome. I want to do all these things. But he's like, no, this doesn't serve you in this way, and here's why. And he helps me make clear like which way I should go, if that makes sense.
It sure does. It sure does.
You know, so I'm sure you can relate, and probably had a lot of the same feelings when you began your journey with Heroes Media Group. And
yeah, you would do anything, you know, because you're like, I gotta keep the lights on, you know, and the part this kind of actually this is a good segue. It ties into kind of what we're talking about here, but it's like you get all these opportunities, and you're looking at it like, okay, here's an opportunity to get paid for X, Y, and Z, and then you start reading the background of the interview and whatnot. And you're like, it doesn't really tie into the show, but you know, it's $100 or $50 or whatever. So you're like, I got to do it. And there are times where you have to do that. My caution that I give to everybody, whether you're a business owner or a podcaster that's just starting off, is put your focus on the purpose. So if you start like, I'm going after all these opportunities, take a step back. What's your purpose? Don't chase the dollar, because don't chase the dollar. You chase the dollar, and some people out there, you need to chase the dollar. You know what? Good on you. God bless you. Good luck. But you're going to end up spending your entire life chasing that dollar, and you'll never have enough dollars that'll make you happy.
Oh, I agree with that 1,000,000%, because I come back to that also.
With that being said, though, focus on your purpose. If you focus on your purpose, profit will always follow. And when you focus on your purpose, you'll notice life being a little sweeter, less stressful, and the money's there when you need it to be.
Oh, so good, man. Yeah. Every opportunity that presents itself now, I have specific instructions to really ask, okay, how does this serve your purpose? And if I can't, in a matter of a split second, give you a reason why it follows the purpose, it's just a no. You know, oh, that's awesome, man. You have taken and just kind of, you've started Heroes Media Group Beverage and JB Addo Clothiers. So you have taken your podcast and now turned it into other businesses. It's birthed other businesses. So let's talk about that and that process and kind of how you ended up there.
So I'll start with JB Addo Clothiers. I wasn't the brainchild. That wasn't my baby. That's actually my buddy James Boggs. And that stemmed from his nonprofit Team Addo. Shout out to those guys. Team Addo they do a lot of stuff for transitioning veterans, and they suit up veterans with a custom made to measure suit. So you're getting out of the military, right? You're hanging up one uniform, and Team Addo helps you get ready for gives you your next uniform. So you make you feel like $1 million and get you set up for success going into your job interview or what have you, whatever path you decide to take after getting out of the military. And it's great. It's a great program. I would check that out. But he asked me a couple of years ago, he's like, hey man, we're going to create a business on this. You interested? And I was like, I need a new wardrobe. Yeah, I'm interested. Like, yeah, let's, I like suits and I don't really dress up in suits a lot. I got a ton of jackets, some nice, and now I have nicer jackets because I'm one of the owners. But I'm usually in cowboy boots, jeans, and a sport coat when I'm on stage or if I'm going to conferences and stuff now. So I'm kind of a walking billboard, if you will, for that company when I go. But HMG Beverage, I was with the media company down at Georgetown University in 2015, 2016. And I was at an event that Dora Bush was putting on, George Bush's sister. And it was a health conference. And I met a gentleman there. He was a Navy veteran. He had a coffee company and he was serving coffee. And we got to chit chatting and kind of, the friendly banter that, Army Navy has. And he was a captain. And we got to talking about coffee. And I was like, man, this is really good. He's like, well, why don't you come on down? I'm in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And I'll show you around. So I was like, I took him up on it. So I'm walking around, I'm learning about coffee, and I was like, hey, can you white label a coffee for me? Like, can I put my, if I buy the coffee, can you slap my label on it and then drop ship it? And he's like, yeah, we can do that. And that's kind of how the coffee was born, but it was ran under the media company the first few years because I wasn't really doing anything with it. In full disclosure, like, here's the honest truth. I just didn't want to pay full price for coffee anymore. So I just, it was for selfish reasons. But in several years later, 2020, he had sold it to some people and they ended up going bankrupt. And my wife and I had a conversation. We're like, well, we like doing this. Let's move it in house. We had no idea what the hell we were doing. So I called up my buddy Sean, who was the original owner, and he started mentoring us what to do and what we needed, and now we roast the coffee ourselves. And it's small batched. So we have, and if this is on video, you can see behind me. There's about 7 different blends that we have over my shoulder. And for me, it's therapeutic. Now I actually enjoy going down and roasting because it's kind of fun, and when the orders come in, I like going down there and putting it together and sealing it up and then shipping it out, and people raving about it like, man, that's really dark. And I was like, that's because I roast it really dark. And that's how it all started. So in 2020, I had a friend of mine in Nashville, Tennessee, says, hey, we want to get into the spirit game and create a gin. I was like, a bourbon, a gin, a rum. Like, in my mind, I was like, we're going to blow this up. And so I started off with a gin, and we had a straight bourbon whiskey, and we found a distiller down in just south of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And with the bourbon, we did 2 runs of 100 bottles. So very limited. And then the gin, we just took off. It was American gin. We did some R&D on it, came up with a good recipe that doesn't taste like Pine Sol, more like black cherry. And I'm not a gin drinker.
I'm not either.
I've already, like, everybody's like, gin. Ugh. Listen, you mix gin with like just damn near anything, and it's good. This stuff, it's 100 proof. So it will, it doesn't take much, but it's you can drink it on the rocks. It's very smooth, and it doesn't smell like a pine tree, and it doesn't taste like a pine tree, and that's why I love it. And so we started that, and I was like, well, I'm just going to move the coffee over this. We need to create another company separate from the media stuff. So we created HMG Beverage. I just stuck with HMG, kept the Heroes side of it in there. We have a trademark logo, which is a star and then 5 small stars in that star. That's a trademark logos. And I was like, well, I'm going to implement that logo into all of the different businesses that we have now moving forward. That's HMG related. So that's kind of how the HMG Beverage was born. That was in 2020, as if I wasn't busy enough.
Of course, right. I love that you got into coffee. I want to get into coffee. However, I'm a coffee snob. I like single origin, like $21 a pound, good light roast. I don't do dark roast. One, the top. I've had my eye on this the whole time we've been recording.
We'll talk offline, and I'll tell you what we have. And if you're a single origin guy, and you like it light, then so you like a very heavily caffeinated. And here's the thing, like lighter. I didn't know this until years later, because I roast like super dark. Like if it starts smoking and there's about to be a fire, okay, that's good. It's ready, and they're like, no, the lighter you roast, the more caffeine it has. And I took this. It was funny. I had a large order for an event that we were doing, and I didn't have the capabilities to do it. It would have taken me 2 weeks to do this because I got a small roaster. So I rented a roaster from another roasting company here locally, and I went over and I was just like, all right, this is the stuff that I need. And he's like, are you sure you got this right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, that's darker than our darkest roast. And I was like, this is my lightest roast. He's like, and so I showed him my stuff, and he's like, we would never roast anything that dark. And so I said, well, I tell you what, let's roast it, and you tell me what it is. And he did. He roasted the way I wanted him to, and it was very old school. It's not computerized. I do very much ear and I listen and watch, and we made him a cup of coffee of our beans afterwards. He's like, holy shit, I may have to reconsider how we do our entire operation.
That's
And
really cool, man.
this is a guy that's been roasting 15 years. And he was just
Yeah.
like, this is darker, so much darker than our darkest roast. And I was like, this is the lightest roast I have.
And to answer your question, it's not that I like a super highly caffeinated cup of coffee, but I'm a 1 cup a day guy. So after I come back from my walk in the morning, that's my treat to myself is my big NASA mug or my I have a Top Gun Maverick mug lately that is a back and forth. But that's my thing. Chemex, it's just kind of a routine thing, and I love trying to pick out the flavor profiles in a light roast. To me, all the dark stuff, it's really usually when I get a dark roast, it's over roasted. It tastes like shit to me. So I would absolutely try your dark roast and all of that.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, for sure. But as a coffee connoisseur, I'm not going to just turn my nose up to it because, especially like with you talking about your process and somebody else saying like that's my darkest roast and that's darker than it, and then like you changed his whole operation, so you've clearly figured something out there.
I think I didn't change much, but I think it wasn't long afterwards where I kind of kept an eye on what they were doing and whatnot, and they ended up coming out with a much darker roast about 3 months later.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cool. I never said anything or whatnot. But I kind of knew. I was like, I wonder if that had anything to do with.
Do you go and source all your beans and all that too, or do you just order online
No,
and
we so I have a guy that we work directly with the farmers. So we got. I just looked at this the other day. I think 7 different areas like Costa Rica, Guatemala, Papua New Guinea, Brazil,
yes.
Indonesia. I mean, they're all over the world. But the guy that I go to, he works directly with the farmers.
That's really cool. I'm so fascinated by coffee and that whole process. We could talk the whole show about that, but what I'm really interested in is when you got into alcohol, mainly because I know that came with its own set of challenges. And I've been asked by a couple of different veterans, like, "Hey, how do I start an alcohol company and this, that, and the other?" And can you speak to that a little bit for those that are listening?
Yeah, I can. It's a pain in the ass. It's a kick in the dick. It's everything. Think of everything that's hard in life and times that by 100. And that's the alcohol business. There's so much red tape to doing it, and it's got to the point where in one state you can produce and you can have a distillery license or in some states they're called mixing license, but then you can't distribute that. You gotta find a distributor to distribute that. Well, then you start a distributing company, which we did. We started a distribution company, and we got our federal license, but then the state license got kicked back. We're like, well, now you need this, and this. Well, then, so now you're looking at different states. Well, this state here, they want X, Y, and Z, but this state here, you only need a name and address. But this state up here, you want name, address, facial recognition, bank statements, your child, your firstborn, and all this other shit. So it gets to be a little bit of a headache, and there's a lot there. Now, mind you, a lot of these other businesses that I'm doing aren't my day-to-day stuff. The media company is my day-to-day stuff. So like I set these other businesses up because it's easy for me to tie in with what we're doing with the media company. But it takes a lot. And now I've got a couple of partners that we're slowly getting the distribution stuff figured out. We've got another company that we're working with so we can get our straight bourbon whiskey back online. We've got our recipe. We own the recipe for that stuff, and we have a game plan of what that looks like: 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and so forth. But here's the other thing: as frustrating as it gets, I'm too stubborn to just like people tell me like, "Hey man, this isn't going to work." It's not going to work today.
Right. But now I'm going to show you.
Might not work this week. Hell, it might not even work this year. But I'm too stubborn to just be like, well, I'm going to keep going with it.
I love that.
I'll keep dumping money in it because I'm stubborn that way.
So how do you manage running all of these businesses? I know you mentioned having partners. So do they take a lot of the workload off of you so you can continue to focus on?
Yeah. A lot of prayer and meditation. Yeah, and you got to be organized, which I'm not. So those that are listening, Adam, how do you do it? I don't. I carry around this pocket computer, and and then honestly, I carry around a notebook, and I take a shit ton of notes, and I put stuff in my little pocket computer. Your cell phone, put stuff on the calendar, like today's meeting.
Yeah.
I was like, otherwise, I'd be off doing whatever.
Yeah, live and die by the calendar. That's what I have to do.
But it's fun. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the creativity of doing stuff, and it allows me to talk with other people. Now, Far, you asked me about other partners and stuff. I say that very loosely in the sense of from the beverage side of things. It's mostly me. But I got a friend of mine that he has his own liquor brand, and we're kind of coming together to create one here eventually. And we're working out the details on that. So it's the coffee's up and going. I mean, we do stuff locally, probably once or twice a month, sometimes twice a month. Well, we'll be out and we'll serve coffee on a weekend, and we'll make several $100s serving 12-ounce cups of coffee, and with that you get a couple of subscription signups. Great, that handles itself. If that ends up being $1 million company someday, great. If it doesn't, I don't give a shit, because it's fun to do. People like it, and that's what it's all about. You know what I mean?
I love that so much. And you just mentioned something that I want to talk about, because I believe this to be true. You said, the partner you're working with has his own liquor business. So essentially he could be considered competition, yet you two still work together. And that's what I've discovered in my journey along this is, other podcasters that I talk about, nobody wants to gatekeep or prevent me from getting to where I'm going. And I don't either. I genuinely give away all of my knowledge to anybody who asks me, whether that's about the podcast, about how to get their mind right and transition out of the military, you name it. I just help people, because I believe there's plenty to go around. Is that kind of the philosophy you've adopted as well?
Honestly, shamefully, I will admit that it wasn't when I started off, because I wanted to be on top.
The best. Yeah.
Well, I thrived, because I come from a sales background too. And I thrived to have that target on my back. I've helped other podcast networks that are larger than HMG now, as far as like their social media stuff, which social media to me is, I got another different opinion about that, but I've helped other people grow their companies and whatnot. And when it comes to like sharing information, hey, let me know. Like literally when I say, let me know if I can help you, that means let me know if I can help you. Like I legitimately am sincere. Like if there's somebody you want me to introduce that I know, great. I'll help you guys out. I don't care. I don't have to be there. There's enough to go around, and we live in it's a small world, but at the same time, if you look from the podcast perspective, most people don't get past 7 shows.
Right.
So if you get to 100 shows, you're pretty much a unicorn.
Well, I'm well on my way. I'm not going to stop till I get there. But I made it past the 7, so we're good there.
But that's just it. People don't understand. Like when you're podcasting, a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do a show, and I'm going to get 10,000 downloads, and I'm going to be the next Joe Rogan." Okay,
no,
I'm going to let
no,
you.
You're not.
You're going to be like, "Oh shit, I got to do this. I got to post this. I got all this post production. I got to blah 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 blah." Yeah, it's a fucking part-time job, is what it is.
It is. Yeah. It sure is. I'm with you on that. You talk about giving back to the community through all of your businesses. How do you do that? How do you approach that? And why do you do that? I think I know why, but
it's some of it has been financial, and some of the companies that we have, and our nonprofit. We do have a nonprofit that you really can't find on the internet, but it's there. With the coffee, we take the proceeds, the percentage of the proceeds of every purchase of coffee goes back into the heroes community. So whether it's a police officer or a teacher or a veteran organization or what have you, sometimes we try to help out any way that we can. We've paid for people to go to events. We've helped organizations, bring people in, or a lot of the times we'll donate, stuff for people or for organizations. So it's kind of, and the reason why I do it is because it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree with you because it points to your values. The two of which you listed are integrity and being a good human. Talk about how those guide you personally and professionally. I also believe in just being a good human. That's,
I mean, you know this, just like any other Army, but what's one of our Army values?
integrity.
Integrity, right? So it's kind of like it's been instilled in us, right? And the being a good human, life is too short. And tomorrow isn't guaranteed. And we know that shit's gonna happen, and we already know what the end story, how it ends. We all know how it ends. So why not be positive and just be good to people while you're here?
Oh man, I agree with that 100% because the minute I started being a good human to other humans and genuinely caring, my life just got better.
There's a people have probably heard of the book The Secret or Think and Grow Rich, like the Napoleon Hill series. He does one, Outwitting the Devil, which is a great book. There's another one, Carnegie, like Influence People. I can't think of the name.
How
of
to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of those, they talk about how, and life and our bodies were energy, right? So it's like if you're putting out negative vibes, that's what you're going to, it's the law of attraction. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's like, people are like, oh, that's hokey shit, whatever. Okay. That's your opinion. I'm going to tell you it works. And that's why it's important to just be a good human, because if you're being good, then that good will come back to you. Now, that's not to say that everything's going to be, hey, we'll sit by the campfire and sing Kumbaya. That's just not realistic. But life in general, I think you will see that it is more enjoyable. It's less stressful, and you'll realize just how good life is if you yourself are being good.
Seriously, I'm with you on that. What you put into the universe, you get back tenfold, whether that's good or bad. And if you'd have asked me that a year ago before that trip to Peru, I would have told you, no, that's bullshit. But in the last year, everything that has happened to me is because I've literally changed what I put into the universe. It's just been amazing to watch everything happen to myself. And sharing that with others, man, it's cool to see, when I share that with others and my perspective on things and they go and try some of those things, how much better their life gets too. And it's like, yeah, see, the shit's not bullshit. It may sound woo woo. It may sound, out there. And I challenge you to open your mind and try some of these things because, man, life gets better.
Oh, it's a lot sweeter. That's for sure.
Right. What's been the biggest challenge you've overcome in building your businesses, and how did you do that?
Wanting to quit
every day, right?
I think, well, not quite every day. There was a time where it was pretty much every day, but I think what it is you have to remember why you're doing it, what your purpose is, and when you focus on that purpose again, I keep going back to purpose. It's almost like there's a freaking theme here. When you focus on that purpose, you understand like why you have to keep going. Like quitting isn't an option. And me personally, I quit all my sports growing up. So like when I got into high school, I played basketball and golf, but then it was like I quit football. I quit baseball, which was my true love, when I was younger. So it was like in the military was the first thing I really didn't quit. And then being a parent, I'm still a parent, so I haven't quit that. So that's,
you don't get to quit that.
Yeah, you don't really quit that. Well, some people have. So
yeah, they damn.
I'm not one of, I went and got the milk and I came back. So it, sorry, my bad. You can just edit that out later. I just,
oh man,
I just look at it like, you got to just keep quitting. Quitting is not an option because there's what am I going to do? Go work
So
for?
when,
I'm unemployable. I'm not going to go work for somebody else at this point in my life. I'm I've mentioned that I'm stubborn earlier, and it's not stubborn in a sense of I I have seen I've watched my pop work for a company for 29 years and then force him into retirement. You're expendable. I said this on another show a couple of weeks ago. How do you want when you're on your deathbed, right? And you're looking at your life, can you look at it and you say, I lived the life I wanted to live the way I wanted to live it, or were you too busy building somebody else's dream?
dude, man, I think back to my own pops. I call my dad pops as well, but he's worked with his hands in the commercial kitchen equipment repair business for 40 years, and he's gonna do it till he's 72, and even then, he says he won't quit. And it's like, when have you ever taken the time to enjoy anything this life has put in front of you? You know, he wants to restore some kind of old muscle car. That's one of the things that I started all of this for, is to retire my father, and give him whatever car I can get out of him, whether that's a Bel Air or a Charger, whatever he wants. I want to just show up one day with it and be like, you're done working. This is your place of employment now, because he will not allow himself. And I'm not saying that we were broke growing up. My parents didn't have money. And I think, obviously they have money now. I know they have some money put away. I think he could probably retire, but also that's cliche. You don't ask them about that when I was growing up either. Like, money was an off limits topic, and we don't have those conversations. And, I just bought, my dad's got AFib, and I just bought him an Apple Watch earlier this year, and he threw an absolute fit about it. He's like, it's $500. You don't need to buy me that. It's so much money. And I'm just like, Dad, it's $500. Like, come on, pops. Like, your health is way more important to me. And if this is something that I can feel better about, then it's a good $500 investment. Not to mention, $500 is not a lot of money. It's just not, and
Yeah, not nowadays. No.
and I'm with you on that. Like I'm also unemployable, because once you've had a taste of building your own life and working for something towards that purpose, if you will, right? That theme that we've talked about, the thought of having to go back and work for somebody, it makes me sick in my stomach almost.
And let me say this. Let me be clear on something real quick, Adam. There are people out here that might get butt hurt because I said, "Oh, I'm unemployable." That's not. If you're not one of those people, and you like going to a 9 to 5, God bless you. God bless you, and I wish you nothing but the best. And I hope you get everything you want out of life doing the 9 to 5 thing, if that's your thing, or the graveyard shift, or what have you. God bless you. And we need people like that. I'm not one of those people. That's where I'm coming from. When I say I'm unemployable, I'm not one of the it's not because I'm an asshole, depending on who you ask, but it's one of those things where I'm just I'm I would rather make $50,000 a year working for myself than making 80 to $100,000 busting my balls for a company that I'm expendable.
Yeah, I'm with you. It makes perfect sense, and I know you're not saying, if the 9 to 5 is for you, then it's for you. That's great, but don't be a fan of the 9 to 5 because you think it's your only option, because it's not your only option.
And here's the thing: there are people out there. This happened last week. It's funny that we're talking about this. Is how do I get away from my job? Well, what is it that you want to do? I want to do IT, or I want to do this, this, and this. Okay, what are you doing at night? He's like, I don't really have time for it. Great, let's sit down. I'll show you. I bet you have time, and you just don't realize it. I literally sat there on a bar napkin and had him write out, okay, well, I go to work from 8 to 4, and then from 5 to 7, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Great. What are you doing from 8 o'clock till midnight? Well, I watch TV for. Stop right there. Let me stop. So you're telling me from like 8 to 10 or 8 to 11, you can't be working on what your passion is or what you want to do? It may take you 6 months, may take you 5 years, but eventually you keep working at this. Eventually you'll be able to leave your day job and full time on what it is that what your purpose is.
And so what you're talking about is delaying gratification. And I think a lot of people don't know how to do that. So how do we convince people that they can have their cake and eat it too, essentially? And you don't have to give up your 9 to 5. I tell transitioning veterans this all the time when they're getting out. Well, I have to work because I have to have my family. And that's great. I support that 100,000%. But what I don't support is you getting comfortable in that job and giving up your dream, because you just sat on a conversation with me for an hour and told me all these giant plans, which I think will be very successful for you. And you do have a good shot at earning that income that you want, and probably more. But what you're going to do is get comfortable in that job. You're not going to sacrifice the short term, for the long term. And you're going to make excuses as to why you can't come home and from 8 to midnight work on your thing. I don't have a job outside of this. I start at 7 in the morning, and there's often times where I'm working till 11 or 11:30 at night. There are also days where I quit at 5 o'clock and I take my happy ass in there and go watch TV.
Yeah. So my thing, and I think the question that you asked was
how do we get them to delay gratification?
Yeah. So stop being lazy, and that's going to rub people the wrong way.
But it's true.
I have every intention to rub you the wrong way, not in a freaky way, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
oh man, this is great. This is great.
We live in a society nowadays where we want instant gratification. I want it, and I want it now.
Yeah.
And just, you know what? Adam, I don't, this is what I want to do. And you have the answers. Just give me the answers and let me go get it. How about fuck off? How about you go work for it? How about you put in the time and the dedicate and grind and do it? I'll give you the blueprint of what you need to do, but you're going to have to put the work in if you want it.
Oh man. And what you're saying, it's the same. I can give you all the answers, but they're not going to mean shit, because in order for you to get anywhere, you have to take the action on those answers that I give you and learn the hard lessons that come with the work.
You still have to put in the work. I'll give you the answers. Here's the blueprint. This is what I did to be successful. And what my definition of success is. I'm not a millionaire. I don't define how much money I have in the bank as success. My success is how many people I've helped along the way. I'm in a business where literally thousands and thousands of people get into every day, and I've been doing it for over a decade. I would say that's pretty successful. This now, to date, 9 years under this brand is the longest thing I've ever done, career-wise or job-wise, ever. That just surpassed the military. That was the longest actual job that I had, where it was 9 years. We're celebrating 9 years under just this brand, and I've been doing this type of work for over a decade now.
That's pretty fucking cool.
It is, and it just hit me just now as I was saying that to you. I didn't realize that until I just said it just now. So
that's awesome, man. That's so cool.
It's one of those things where we have to stop being a lazy society and put in the work. Everybody's like, oh, well, they got it. Their overnight success. Well, what you don't see is that overnight success took them 12 years to accomplish. Here's the other thing. Do you ever notice when stuff's given to you, you just don't appreciate it as much as if you
I never have, ever.
You know what I'm saying?
Cool. Yeah, for sure. It feels so much better to build something that's real. We talked about the numbers of this show that I've done in the first 2 months.
Yeah.
And I don't know if those are good or bad. I don't even know how accurate they are.
But here's the thing. You know why? You know how they're. You know why they're good, Adam? It's my serious answer. You know how they're good? People are fucking listening. People tune in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's I don't know if it's successful. Did anybody download it? Yeah, I got X amount of people to download it. Well, then I'd say that's pretty successful then.
Yeah. And it's so much, it's just so rewarding to know all the work I put into that, to see just one more number pop up. It's just man, this is so cool. I use a tool for YouTube just to kind of help me out and track some stuff, but I got an email last night. You surpassed 250 downloads. And I'm like, fuck, good, yeah, dude. Nice. That's awesome. Right. Yeah. that makes me feel good.
Yeah, as it should.
You know,
as it should.
But I also sat here for a long time putting in the work and the late nights and the pulling my hair out because I didn't know if this was going to go anywhere. I had to take that chance on myself, you know? Yeah, I know. I know. We're talking about pulling my hair out and I got plenty of it. But
I didn't, when I got into this business, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about post-production. I didn't know about lighting. I didn't know about type of equipment. I've got literally tens of thousands of hours of just learning different, and mind you, this is obviously over the last decade. So much has changed over the last decade. You know, new technology comes out. Now you got all these AI software. Like, Jesus Christ, like I need to learn something else at my age, for crying out loud. Like, shit, you know?
Yeah.
But it's cool. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man, I think what we're doing is good, and congratulations on your success that you've had in such a short amount of time. So when people, my thing is, because I'm going to call out the big companies in this industry, the 800-pound gorillas out there. I won't say their names, but they know who they are, and I hope they're fucking listening, because I've said this to them to their face. They say, oh, you need so many downloads before you can ask for this amount of money, or you need so many downloads to do this. No, you don't. That's the mindset that you want people to think. I've helped people make thousands of dollars a month with less than 1,000 downloads a month on their stuff. I've done it personally. And some of the organizations I'm still working with after 5 years. So it's doable. Stop. If you get into podcasting, I guess this is my little pitch. If you're going to get into podcasting, pay attention to who's doing it and do some research. At the same time, just like mainstream media, don't believe everything you read or everything you watch.
Yeah, that's such good advice, because I thought I was going to have a whole lot of downloads, and lo and behold, I just asked and got my first partner on the show, right? Like, it's not monetary or anything like that, but he's got a bigger audience than I do. That company does. And, you know, it led to me getting a spot on the board of directors as the director of recruiting for QRF Up, which is a veteran nonprofit crisis app that will basically help keep you out of prison when you're losing your mind. Yeah, you know, like, again, what I was talking about with opportunities, and, you know, I don't have a huge following. People listening to this, you know what my following is because you see all my socials. You know, my biggest following's on LinkedIn, about getting close to 3,000 now. I started with 93 in November of last year. So, you know, the grind is real.
Putting in the work, and it's just being consistent.
But what you said about you need 1,000 downloads a month, that's what hosts will tell you. But I could probably reach out to different companies, some of guests that we've had on this show that would gladly sponsor this show. You know what I mean? Like, so you're absolutely right. Like, do your research, do your homework, ask questions. I think the biggest thing is just ask, because you don't get anything unless you ask.
What's the worst thing they're going to say?
No.
Then you didn't lose anything, did you?
Right. And as a guy with a sales background, I also cut my teeth in sales in the insurance industry. 1,000 no's before you get one yes. If you can keep that in mind.
It's just a numbers game. Once you understand what the numbers are, then you can literally calculate it. And then you're like, okay, I need 100 no's before I get that one yes.
Yeah, man. Based on your experiences, what advice do you have for those transitioning out? I know you touched on it a little bit earlier in the show where you said, you know, 24 months out, you need to really start thinking about this, but let's break that down for them. And how would you get out differently if you were getting out today?
I would, if I was active duty, around the 24 to 18 to 24 month, you're starting to look at, you know, where you want to end up, what you want to do. Now, what most people don't tell you is you're probably going to do 3 things before you find out what it is that you want to really do. That's not my statistic. That's out there on Google it. That's, you know, but start looking and start networking. You know, if you want to get into contract work back overseas, reach out to some of the contractors. If you want to get into, like, you know, the Raytheons and the, yada yada yada. All, you know, the big companies like that. Then do that. If you want to go home and you know, to some podunk town wherever you're from, whatever, and you want to manage the Walmart there, well, then reach out to the manager. Whatever it is, start doing it before you get out, so you have that plan of action. If you wait until you get out, you are way too late.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. I tried more than 3 things before I figured out what I wanted to do when I grew up. And
That's about the average. It's about the average. The last 5 years, what we've seen, I see we as a collective with the organizations that I deal with and that I talk to, they all say it's like, you know, the average retire, the person that's transitioning out of the military, whether they're retiring or just ETSing, they'll try 3 different jobs before they really find what it is that they're comfortable or what they like to do.
yeah, for advice for those veterans getting out who want to be entrepreneurs, or anybody listening to this who wants to be an entrepreneur, what advice do you have for them when they're just starting out?
Jump.
So simple, and I love it. Yeah, take the leap.
Here's the thing. Look at life, right? And I mentioned this earlier, like when you're on your deathbed and you're looking at life, like, you know, did you do everything you wanted to do? Now picture this. I'm a visionary guy, so just hear me out on this. I want you guys to close your eyes, and I want you to picture yourself standing on a street corner, okay? And it's not vehicles or cars or trucks that are going by. It's the things that you wanted in life going past you. You're on the street corner. You're never going to be able to capture or get what it is that you want because you're too busy watching it go by. Don't like that analogy? Great. Here's another one for you. And I stole this one. I can't even remember from who, but like close your eyes again. Picture yourself standing on the edge of the cliff. And it's foggy. You look down into this gully and you can't see the bottom because you're way up high. Jump. You'll learn to fly on the way down. But here's the thing. Here, I guarantee you, if I can guarantee anything, this is one thing I will guarantee. You're going to hit the rocks. You're going to get bruised. But as long as you don't give up, you'll eventually start to fly. And eventually it gets easier. And then you're soaring. And then you're above the clouds because you kept going. And then when you look down, you realize, you know what? It really wasn't that bad. And it was totally worth it. But you would never, ever know what that feeling is like if you're just standing there looking down and wondering what that could be.
Man, I'm going to steal that first metaphor you used. I like that a lot. Well, because it's powerful. I mean, I like to do visualization techniques. I think that's how for the strategic veteran, like I started with the end in mind. I know what the long-term plan for this is. I would like for it to become a skill bridge program that, veterans who are transitioning spend 6 months learning how to build some kind of digital business, at least being set up with, by the end of the 6 months, they have a really good runway for making money online through email lists, building a following, whatever that looks like for whatever they're trying to do. Hell, maybe even by the time they get out, if they're diligent enough, they can be making more money than they were making in the Army. I think that that's extremely possible. And as I continue to gather knowledge and information and put this into palatable things for them within the community, the stronghold, I think it can actually be that. And I would have never known that if I hadn't taken the leap in November of last year and just said, fuck it. I walked away from a commercial pilot. I walked away from my own insurance business. I walked away from several really good management jobs to pursue something that was mine, something that I had control of my time and my freedom to do whatever I want. And it's been the best decision I've ever made because I don't want to end up on that street corner of that cliff, just looking at all the shit that could have been possible for me going by.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to the law of attraction we talked about a little bit earlier too, is like everything you want in life, you hold in the palm of your hand. You just have to grab it. You have to believe that you have it. And if you're wanting to start a business, you'll never know. And I'm not saying quit your day job. Here's a story for you. I was working full time and going to school full time when I started when I got into I was already an entrepreneur because I had already had the business, but I was getting to the point where my son he was getting ready to go into let's see here, junior high, and he was playing flag football and he was doing some other stuff, right? And I never would have been able to go see any of his games or any of his school activities because I was working during that time. Family first. Like I'm not. You're not going to tell me that I can't go to my son's football game. I guarantee you're not going to tell me that I can't go. Like, I'm going. Now, whether you fire me or not is completely up to you, but I'm not staying here. I'm going to, my son needs me. And so it was April 1st of 2013, April Fool's Day, 2013. I was working for a college down in Arizona, and I walked into work 20 minutes late. And at that time I'd been there for like a year, and I was just kind of like, everybody knew who I was because I'd worked for a competitor and I was their poster child for that competitor. And
You're a good salesman, weren't you?
so everybody, I was, but I was literally their poster boy. I was on billboards, buses. My face was plastered all over the country. People knew who I was with that particular brand and that company. So this company that my last company that I was working for, kind of knew who I was, and they were taking advantage of it in a sense of like, my manager would come up to me and say, like, hey, let's, what do you think about this? Or what would you do this? Because mind you, the company that I worked for where I was a poster boy, I was in management. I didn't want to be in management with this new company. I just wanted to go in, like, work my 8 hours and go home. Like, I didn't want anybody to bother me and just kind of do that. Well, my manager would have these, bi-weekly meetings with me, and then the very next day call a team meeting and then regurgitate everything I said the day before. And after a while, I was like, you don't pay me enough to do your job. So I came in 20 minutes late, and it was on April Fool's. I went in, and everybody's like, hey man, what's up? I gathered all my stuff in a box and I walked out. And people were laughing, like, dude, you're such a prankster, blah, blah, blah. I was like, April Fool's, blah, blah. 20 minutes later, I get a phone call from the manager, and he was just like, hey, man, where'd you go? I was like, I told you I quit. And he's like, you could hear a pin drop. He's like, are you serious? I said, yeah. He's like, oh, man, I thought that was just an April Fool's. I was like, yeah, joke's on you. I'm for real. Hung up, and I never looked back. And that's, I had a mortgage, I had 2 vehicles, and I had no money in the bank. And I say this, Adam, I'm telling you this story because those of you that are listening, don't do what I did when you have a kid, a mortgage, and 2 car payments. Don't just quit if you don't have money. Work up towards that. Now, I got lucky. I was very lucky. I'd already been a little bit established in this business, and I had some income coming in, a little bit, not much. But I say that because if you want to keep doing what it is that you're doing and you're passionate about, you have to take that leap. And that's where my leap of faith came in, where I was just tired of.
Yeah, no, for sure. And what you're saying, man, I did a similar thing. I walked the first job that I was going to do when I got out was working for Toyota, not as a salesman, but higher in management at the dealership, not selling cars. But they told me I had a VA appointment the same day that I was supposed to start training for this new position. And they straight up told me, like, no, that's not going to work. You need to cancel that appointment. I was like, fuck you. And then fast forward another 5 years or so, I was working for another company and more VA appointments. And for those listening who are familiar with the VA, you already know. For those listening who are not, the VA gives you an appointment and you take it because you never know, like, when you're going to get another one. Like, and that's very common. It's not as common down here where I'm at in Florida now, but it's still, I'll give you an example. I made a dentist appointment last year for my dentist appointment this year. I made it in like October or November of last year. It's still not until the end of August of this year. So you have to take these when they come available. And any employer, the last straw for me was like, if you take that VA appointment, you're going to have to take a PTO day and, not get paid or whatever. And I was like, that's some bullshit, man. Like, I'm not going to be told that I can't go take care of myself.
And that's the nature of the beast when you're dealing with corporate America, unfortunately.
Yeah, man. Looking forward, what are some of your major goals and aspirations for the next few years with all your companies?
just continue growth, to continue steady growth on all fronts, and to help out. Hopefully, this time 5 years from now, we'll have literally thousands of new stories that we can share, and lives that we have helped for the better.
I love that answer, man. What's the future of Heroes Media Group look like, and how do you see your other ventures impacting the lives of the people that you're serving?
Well, I appreciate that question. Heroes Media Group's going to be around long after I'm gone, I think.
That's your legacy.
That's it initially started, like I said, as a podcast network, and it was a way to change how media was delivered and consumed. And we're just, podcasting has been around since 2006. So I didn't discover it. I think I've played a big role in it over the last decade, especially in the veteran community. And I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think podcasting, you're going to see more and more you're seeing more and more companies go into advertising and stuff for even smaller podcasts and stuff like that. So I think it's there's a lot that's going to happen, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. And the media company as a whole, where I would like to see us average 2 to 3 audiobooks a year over the next 5 years. I'd like us to get up to over 100 shows that are hosted on the network here. And there's a rumor going around that we may start doing an annual event somewhere in the country. So it's just a rumor right now, but keep your ear to the ground for that. So, and then the other businesses, like the JB Auto Clothiers, I love. My business partner, James Boggs, and the stuff that he does. He's just a wealth of knowledge, an Army veteran. He was a Black Hawk pilot. He was a Marine first. He'll tell you he was a Marine that flew for the Army. So, but just an all around great guy, and he's got a heart of gold. And then the beverage company, would like to, the coffee side of it is going to continue to grow. I don't doubt that at all. And I would like to see the spirit side of it get back up to its potential that it has. But I'm not in a rush with it either. It will happen when it's supposed to happen.
Do you think, given what you just said about the media company and podcasts and sponsorships and all of that, that it's a viable business model for those veterans who have had ideas about starting a podcast? And do you think that they can experience success in that space?
Depends. I think, if you're going to start a podcast, why are you starting the podcast first? Like, do you have a business? If you have some other business, if you have a business, then you should have a podcast of some sort, especially if it's a like promotional items or something that you're selling or something, or coaching or something like that. You should have this type of outlet. It's a podcast is a great platform to promote your business, right? If you're doing a podcast just to do a podcast, then have a certain niche and then focus on companies and ways to monetize. If you're wanting to make a living on this, you're going to want to monetize the podcast eventually. And if you're not sure what your niche is, or I just want to shoot the shit and blah blah blah, great. There are shows for that, and there's companies out there that will support those types of shows. Just know what that niche is, and how, have an idea of who you would approach with that. As far as like starting an entire network, it's not for the faint of heart. Take it from somebody that's been doing it for a decade, but I can't imagine. Here's the thing: I can't imagine doing anything else either.
So you're still happy to get out of bed and do it?
Oh God, every freaking day. I love onboarding new show. We got 2 new shows that we're onboarding right now that will start in September. Like I said, we got a production team. The production team is great. We got a social media and a marketing gal that she's got her own company that we kind of white label our stuff through her, and vice versa. Long time friend there. and the hosts of the podcasts that are on the network now, and even the ones in the past that have been on the network in the past that are no longer podcasting or just not doing it as often, it's been awesome. It's just been, when I say I'm blessed, it's such an understatement when it comes to being able to do this stuff. It's opened up so many doors, and it's allowed not just me but other people to do things that, hadn't we had this platform, they probably never would have been able to do.
I love that answer, man. How can the listeners connect with you and learn more about your work with Heroes Media Group and all your other ventures?
Thank you. So Heroes Media Group, you can go to heroesmediagroup.com. You can find us on all social platforms at Heroes Media GRP. And if you want to contact me directly, go to Mr. Adam Bird, just Mr. Adam Bird, that's BIRD, like a bird that flies, MrAdamBird.com, and you can see all of my stuff that I've done there, and you can find me at Mr. Adam Bird on social media.
Yeah, be sure you don't just Google his name because you'll get some congressman.
You get a congressman, you get a famous photographer in England, and so. But yeah, if you Google Mr. Adam Bird, I'm the only Mr. Adam Bird that pops up. So
let's see, SEO at work right there. I love it, man. This is a personal question for me. The last thing before I get you out of here, 3 guests you think I should have on this show?
That's a tough one. It could go. Here's what I'll say: the type of guest that I think you should have on the show is a veteran with an interesting story that has a successful business. I know it's such a generic one. You're like, you dick.
Yeah, I know my I know my ICP.
I think I don't know. That's I've never thought about it. You look at some of the bigger veterans that are out there, right, on social media. You got your Tim Kennedys, you got your Sean Ryan, and Jocko and stuff like that. But that's not what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to have you look closer into probably some of the smaller or the ones that aren't as active. It's the ones that fall under I'm the most famous person you've never heard of. I think those are the veterans that you want to look for. Do I have a name? Yeah. Here's one to look at. And even I encourage everybody to go listen to this show. It's called The Arms Room Show. And you can find it on Heroes Media Group. You can find it on Apple. I created the Arms Room Show at my old platform that we had. And when we brought it over to this platform here, Glenn, he's the main host, good dude. But anything that's firearms related, I talk like anything, whether it's sights or suppressors or handguns or rifles or ammunition, whatever. I call him first. He is my go-to person. And but that's it's titled The Arms Room, but they do a lot of like dirt medicine and a lot of like survival, like prepping and this and that. It's such an educational show that everybody can learn from, and it's something that everybody needs, especially in this day. He's a great interview. Guys like him, guys and gals like him, his wife Drew is also amazing, good friends with my wife. The down to earth people like that. Those are the types. And I know that doesn't answer your question completely, but that's my answer.
It definitely answers my question. I learning about new podcasts that I can go and study
like that.
Yeah, man. Last thing for you, any final thoughts or messages you want to leave them with before we get you out of here, my friend?
First off, let me say this, Adam. I appreciate the opportunity to come on here. It means a lot to me. I don't take it lightly, and I think this is really cool. I think you're doing a great job, and congratulations with all your success and what it is that you're doing. It's needed. So thank you for stepping up and doing what you do. For the listeners, the viewers out there, I would say, if there's something in your life, believe in yourself, and a couple of things. One, if you're transitioning out and you're just having a hard time, call us, give us a shout, let us know. There are people out there that want to help. There are people out there that will listen. Put your pride aside and let us help you. That's what we're here for. We've been through it. You don't have to do it. You are not alone. You are not alone. And then second, those of you that thought about potentially, starting a business or whatnot, and you're not really sure what to do, the first thing you got to do is you got to take that leap of faith. You got to jump. You got to take that first step. Get out there and just do it. And you'll learn on the way. Write the next chapter. You're in a time, as you're listening to this right now, where you're holding the pen and you have a blank piece of paper in front of you. My question to you is, what is this next chapter of your life going to say? God bless you all, and thank you.
Thank you, brother, so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Adam Bird. Please don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe, download, and share this so that we can achieve my goal by May 9th, 2025, the day I turn 40, of getting this in front of 1 million veterans. I know it's a lofty goal, but if there's one community on the planet that can do it, it's the veteran community. Again, thank you, Mr. Bird, for being here. I greatly appreciate it, and the honor was all mine, man. Super grateful for you.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at the Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.